Hello and welcome to English Spark Official. I'm Zayden, joined as always by Alara.
Hey everyone! We're so excited about today's topic.
So, have you ever spoken a foreign language for like an hour straight and you suddenly realize that your actual face is sore?
Oh, yeah, like a physical ache.
Right. I mean, not your brain being tired, but your physical jaw. You feel this dull ache in your cheeks, and the back of your tongue feels weirdly heavy.
It's exhausting in a completely different way.
Exactly. You're physically exhausted in a way that, reading a textbook has literally never made you feel.
Because you're actually doing a workout.
Yeah. And today, we are doing a deep dive into a document that basically proves you haven't been failing at pronunciation because of a bad memory or like a lack of vocabulary. You've been failing because you essentially skipped leg day for your face.
That is the perfect way to put it. I mean, we generally treat language like it's just software, right? Like something we just need to download directly into our prefrontal cortex.
Just install the Spanish update and you're good to go.
Right, but spoken language is actually profoundly biomechanical. It's literally an athletic event that's happening in, a space of a few cubic inches inside your head.
Which sounds kind of intense when you put it like that.
It is. That pain you feel in your cheeks, that is the tearing and rebuilding of microscopic muscle fibers. You are forging entirely new neural pathways that have basically sat totally dormant since you were a baby.
Okay, so to get into how this actually works, we're looking at a really fascinating internal blueprint today. It's called the Muscle Memory Pronunciation Podcast Scripting Protocol.
Yes, the foundational DNA for the channel English Spark Official.
Exactly. And this protocol dictates, with almost surgical precision, exactly how their hosts, these two personas named Zayden and Alara, must guide learners through English pronunciation.
And they have a very specific target audience in mind for this, right?
Yeah, they were specifically targeting that really frustrating A2 to B2 gap.
Yeah.
Like where your receptive knowledge is pretty good and your vocabulary is decent, but the productive output is just a huge physical bottleneck.
Oh, that is the worst phase. Your brain knows exactly what it wants to say, but your mouth just utterly refuses to cooperate.
Totally. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this specific curriculum's approach to what they call muscle memory training. We want to extract the core daily physical exercises so you can apply them to your own real-life speaking situations.
Because the protocol's entire mission is to move the learner away from academic memorization and push them into an actual physiological training regimen.
Right, getting out of the textbook and into the body.
Exactly. It mandates specific physical exercises, things like shadowing, active listening cues, rhythmic repetition, and all of these are designed to be seamlessly integrated into daily life situations.
So looking at the very title of the source document, it kind of sets the stakes right away. It says muscle memory training, physical exercises for pronunciation.
It does not bury the lead there.
Not at all. And right at the top, there is this incredibly strict mandate regarding language level control. It dictates that Zayden and Alara must start with basic, simple vocabulary and only gradually increase the difficulty.
Which is a huge shift from how most people try to study.
Yeah, it explicitly says no complex academic jargon is allowed. But if we are talking about A2 to B2 learners, they already know intermediate vocabulary. Why hold them back linguistically if the whole goal is to improve their speaking?
Well, it really comes down to understanding the sheer physical complexity of the human vocal tract. Think about the human tongue for a second.
Okay, I'm thinking about it.
It has absolutely no bones. It is what's called a muscular hydrostat.
A muscular hydrostat? What does that even mean?
It means it functions very much like an octopus tentacle or, an elephant's trunk.
Oh, wow. Okay. That is a wild image to have in my head right now.
Right. But think about what it has to do. To produce a standard English R sound, which linguists call the alveolar approximant, you have to do this incredibly complex maneuver. You have to bunch the body of the tongue up, drop the tip slightly, and then flare the sides against your upper molars.
That sounds like a yoga pose for my mouth.
It basically is. And you have to do all of that while pushing air through a very, very specific aperture. Now imagine your native language is Spanish.
Okay, so I'm used to rolling my R's.
Exactly. Your tongue has spent decades forcefully tapping the alveolar ridge behind your teeth to make that trilled R. Millions of times, you've practiced one highly specific geometric configuration.
And now English comes along and says, no, do this weird bunched up flaring thing instead.
Yes, you are asking a muscle to suddenly perform a completely alien contortion.
So your mouth has basically been doing like a very specific type of ballet for 20 years, and suddenly you're asking to be a kickboxer.
That is a great analogy. The muscles just literally do not know how to fire in that new sequence.
And if you walk into a gym on your very first day of kickboxing, the coach doesn't hand you a 100-pound weighted vest and tell you to execute a spinning back kick.
Right, because you would fail, pull a muscle, and probably just never return to the gym again.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't. So the English Spark Protocol understands this concept of progressive overload. That is why it insists on starting with clear, smooth, simple sentences.
You have to isolate the muscle movement using lightweight.
Right. The simple vocabulary is the lightweight. It requires zero cognitive effort to translate, so the learner can completely master the physical shape first. Only then do you progress to the really complex, heavy consonant clusters.
Exactly. But I can hear some people pushing back on this.
Oh, for sure. Wait, let me guess. If we're avoiding complex grammar and higher-level vocabulary to focus purely on mouth movements, aren't we just creating highly articulate parrots?
That is usually the exact criticism, yeah.
Like if an A2 learner can perfectly pronounce, I'll have a tall latte, but has literally no idea how the underlying grammatical structure works, haven't we failed them on a foundational language level?
Well, no, we haven't failed them at all. We're just respecting the strict limits of human cognitive bandwidth.
Okay, unpack that bandwidth idea for me.
So we are talking about the prefrontal cortex, which handles your working memory, and honestly, it is a severe bottleneck.
It can only handle so much at once, right?
Yeah, right. If you ask a learner to simultaneously conjugate an irregular verb in the past perfect tense, while also trying to physically maneuver their tongue between their teeth to produce an English TH fricative, their system just crashes.
Yeah, that's like asking my computer to render a 4K video while running 5 different video games.
It is the mental equivalent of trying to pat your head, rub your belly, and solve a quadratic equation all at the exact same time. Motor functions and cognitive functions actively compete for the same limited neural resources.
Oh, I see. So by temporarily stripping away the grammatical load, you free up 100% of the prefrontal cortex to just direct the motor cortex.
Precisely. You give the brain permission to just focus on the physical movement. And once that physical movement becomes an unconscious reflex, once the muscle memory is there, the cognitive bandwidth frees back up.
And then the learner can finally focus on the grammar again, but without tripping over their own tongue.
Exactly.
So the conscious brain acts as the scaffolding, and once the building is totally secure, you just take the scaffolding away.
That's a beautiful way to visualize it.
But how does the protocol actually build that scaffolding day to day? Because the document outlines these mandatory daily workouts, specifically something called shadowing practice.
Ah, yes, shadowing. That's a huge part of the English Spark method.
Right, and it's always cued by the phrase, repeat after me, along with this heavy emphasis on the repetition of key phrases.
Shadowing is so much more than just repeating. It is the immediate physical mimicking of the speaker's exact inflection, rhythm, and mouth shape.
So when Zayden or Alara say, repeat after me, it's not just a polite suggestion.
Not at all. It is literally the starting gun for a physiological event in the listener's brain and body.
Walk me through the biology of that. What is actually happening when I shadow a phrase?
Okay, so every single time your brain sends the signal to your mouth to form that unfamiliar shape and your mouth successfully executes it, a very specific type of glial cell in your brain gets to work.
The glial cell.
Yeah, specifically an oligodendrocyte.
Okay, oligodendrocyte, that is a word.
It's a mouthful, I know. But what this cell does is incredible. It wraps a microscopic layer of fat, which is called myelin, around that specific neural pathway.
Wait, so we are literally physically insulating the wiring inside our brains.
Precisely. That is exactly what myelin does. It acts as electrical insulation for your neurons.
That is wild.
And the more repetitions you do, the thicker that myelin sheath becomes. And the thicker it is, the faster and more effortlessly the electrical signal travels from your motor cortex down to your tongue and lips.
So that is the actual, literal biological definition of muscle memory.
Yes. The repetitive shadowing isn't just behavioral practice. It is structural brain modification. You are physically changing your brain.
Okay, but looking at the rules here, the protocol includes an intense, all-caps warning for the hosts about this practice.
I know the one you mean.
Yeah, it says the output must be a natural, human-like conversation. And it explicitly mandates in huge letters, not robotic, not textbook.
And there is a very dangerous biological reason for that warning.
Oh, really? Dangerous.
Because myelination does not judge. Your brain has absolutely no idea what the difference between a good habit and a bad habit is. It only knows what you repeat.
Oh, wow. So if I repeat something weird.
Exactly. If you practice making these stiff, over-enunciated, robotic textbook sounds because you are trying way too hard to be grammatically correct, you will heavily myelinate a robotic neural pathway.
So when you go out into the real world and try to order a coffee, your automated reflex will be to sound like a literal machine.
Yes, you've insulated the wrong wires.
Man, it's like the difference between practicing scales on a piano and actually playing a jazz solo.
Oh, I like that. Expand on that a bit.
Well, you can sit there metronomically playing C, D, E, F, G over and over, and your fingers will myelinate that exact sequence perfectly. But a conversation isn't a scale, you know? A conversation is jazz.
Right, it's unpredictable.
Yeah, you need the rhythm, the swing, the slight pauses, the messy human elements to actually sound like a person.
The jazz analogy works perfectly for the rhythm and the flow, but it actually falls a little short when we talk about accuracy.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, in jazz, if you hit a wrong note, you can just pass it off as a stylistic choice, right? It's improvisation.
True. You just pretend you meant to do it.
But in language pronunciation, a wrong note, like a misplaced tongue or a rounded lip instead of a flat one, means you literally aren't understood. You just lose the meaning entirely.
Oh, right. Because changing one vowel sound can change the entire word.
Exactly. But your point about the feel of the practice is so crucial. That's why the protocol mandates that Zayden and Alara maintain this very specific tone. It calls for a 20s to 30s friendly, casual, modern vibe.
They aren't speaking like news anchors. They use interruptions. They laugh. They react to each other.
And by having the learner shadow that specific casual tone, the muscle memory gets tuned to real-life prosody.
Prosody, that's like the musicality of the language, right?
Yes, the music and flow of connected speech, the micropauses, the intakes of breath, the natural blending of words.
But here's the catch, and I think this is fascinating. You cannot physically mimic what you cannot accurately perceive.
Oh, absolutely.
If you don't hear the note, you can't play the note accurately or with rhythm, which brings up the protocol's intense requirement for active listening.
It is a non-negotiable step in the English Spark method.
Yeah, it seems to treat listening not as just this passive intake of information, but as a mandatory physical prerequisite to actually speaking.
Because without a flawless auditory map in your brain, motor production is just impossible. You have no target.
And the protocol forces the hosts to use what they call listening focus cues. Specifically, they must look at the camera or address the mic directly and say, "Listen carefully," before they introduce a difficult sound.
And they also have to weave in these small interactive questions right after.
But why that specific phrasing, like "listen carefully," feels almost painfully obvious, right? We are listening to an audio format, so of course we're listening.
You'd think so, but there is a big difference between hearing and actively listening. We hear constantly, but we rarely listen at a strict phonetic level.
Okay, what do you mean by phonetic level?
Well, it goes back to when we were babies. Human babies are actually born with the ability to distinguish every single phonetic contrast in every human language.
Wait, really? Every language?
Every single one. But by the time they are about 10 to 12 months old, this process called perceptual narrowing occurs.
Perceptual narrowing. Sounds like the brain is getting rid of stuff.
That's exactly what it's doing. The brain basically realizes, hey, I don't need to hear the difference between the Hindi retroflex T and the dental T if I'm growing up in an English-speaking household in Chicago.
So it just deletes that ability.
It literally prunes those synaptic connections so it can become much more efficient at processing its native language. So as adults, our brains actively filter out phonetic differences that don't exist in our mother tongue. We literally hear them as the exact same sound.
That is mind-blowing. So a Japanese speaker who really struggles with the English R and L sounds isn't just failing to move their tongue correctly.
No, not at all. Their brain is physically categorizing both of those distinct acoustic signals into a single native phonetic bucket. From their perspective, they're literally hearing the same sound.
Wow. Okay, so that cue, listen carefully, is basically a hack to get around that.
Yes, it is a cognitive jolt. It's designed to completely bypass that automatic filtering. It essentially tells the adult brain, hey, stop processing for semantic meaning for 5 seconds and process for raw acoustic data.
Because if a learner's auditory cortex hasn't built a distinct map for, say, the short I in ship versus the long E in sheep, Their motor cortex has literally no target to aim for.
Exactly. And when there's no target, the mouth will simply default to whatever vowel is closest in their native language.
Which leads to some very funny or very awkward misunderstanding.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so the protocol is huge on putting this into relatable situations and practical usage. Let's look at an A2 learner in a high-pressure daily life scenario to see how this plays out.
Okay, lay out the scenario.
You're at the coffee shop counter, the espresso machine is screaming in the background, the barista is staring at you, and there's a huge line of really impatient commuters behind you.
I'm getting stressed just hearing about it.
Right. And you need to order a tall iced latte with 3 sugars. Now, the in 3 is a notoriously difficult sound, an interdental fricative, right?
Yes. Very tough for a lot of language backgrounds.
So if you haven't done that active listening training we just talked about, what happens in that specific moment of stress?
Okay, so biologically, when you are under pressure like that, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, cortisol just floods into your bloodstream.
The classic fight or flight response.
Exactly. And in that state, your prefrontal cortex, that slow, deliberate, conscious part of your brain we talked about earlier, essentially just shuts down to conserve energy.
So you completely lose the cognitive bandwidth to even think about where your tongue is supposed to go.
Yes, you default entirely to your most heavily myelinated pathways, your automated reflexes.
So if you haven't actively mapped the sound, what does the motor cortex do?
It panics, and it substitutes the closest native equivalent it has on file. So instead of 3, you end up asking for 3 sugars or 3 sugars.
Which opens up a really terrifying possibility for anyone trying to learn a language.
I know where you're going with this.
Right. Because if you are practicing in your car and you are just enthusiastically shadowing a podcast, but you missed the subtle auditory distinction at the very beginning, are you actively building a superhighway to the wrong destination?
Unfortunately, yes.
Like, can you develop the muscle memory too well for an incorrect sound?
Yes, and it is honestly the bane of language teachers worldwide. It is a phenomenon known as fossilization.
Fossilization, like it turns to stone.
Pretty much. A learner incorrectly maps the sound initially, and then they apply all that progressive overload and repetition to that bad map. They myelinate a deeply incorrect physical habit.
Oh, man. And breaking a bad habit is so much harder than starting from scratch.
It's agonizing. Because to break a fossilized pronunciation error, you can't just learn the new sound. You have to actively suppress and untrain a deeply ingrained physical reflex before you can even begin to lay down the new pathway.
You literally have to dismantle the old highway before you can pour the concrete for the new one.
Exactly. And that is the genius behind the English spark sequencing in this protocol. They never, ever just say, repeat this.
Right. The protocol dictates a very specific chain of events.
Yes. First, they use the cue, listen carefully, to break the perceptual narrowing and set the auditory map.
Then they briefly and very simply explain the physical mechanism, like literally where the tongue goes, but without the academic jargon.
Right. And only then do they trigger the physical repetition with repeat after me. They make absolutely sure the blueprint is flawless before they allow the construction crew to start working.
Okay, so if the stakes of fossilizing a bad habit are really that high, and the mechanics of the mouth are this delicate, how do Zayden and Alara actually deliver this sequence without inducing massive anxiety in the learner?
That's the real trick, isn't it?
Seriously, because the minute I know I'm being tested on my tongue placement, I completely freeze up.
And that is where the psychological design of the protocol comes into play. If we look at the structural rules for the training session, the mandate is incredibly clear.
Yeah, it says the script must include daily life examples, but the absolute golden rule, and again, this is written in all caps in the document, is do not label sections explicitly.
Right. No signposting whatsoever.
So they can't say, welcome to the practice section, or now we will review the tricky consonants. The protocol says everything must be a blended, balanced dialogue with light humor.
And that's because of a psychological concept called state-dependent learning.
State-dependent learning. How does that work here?
Well, the physiological and psychological state you are in when you encode a memory heavily influences your ability to retrieve it later.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if a podcast host explicitly announces it is time for the pronunciation drill, the learner's brain instantly recognizes the structure of a classroom.
Oh, I see. The shoulders tense up, the stress kicks in.
Exactly. The affective filter, which is the emotional block that impedes learning, just goes right up. You enter full school mode.
And the muscle memory you build in that tense school mode with high anxiety and hyperfocus is completely inaccessible when you are, say, relaxed at a dinner party just trying to tell a funny joke.
Precisely. Because real life does not come with chapter headings.
Right. When you are chatting with a colleague by the water cooler, a little graphic doesn't appear in your field of vision warning you that a difficult past tense verb is approaching.
By forbidding those explicit labels, the protocol essentially forces the hosts to hide the repetition inside a completely natural interaction.
It's sneaky. It ensures the learner builds their motor reflexes in a relaxed conversational state, which is the exact state they will need to be in to use the language in the real world.
Sneaky is a good word for it. It's essentially covert training.
Let's actually contrast two hypothetical learning experiences to see how this plays out in real life.
Okay, let's hear them.
So, scenario A. You open a traditional audio course. A very stern, disembodied voice says, Chapter 4, the TH sound. Listen and repeat. The theater is on Thursday. I thought about the theory.
Ugh, I'm falling asleep just listening to that.
Right. You are fully aware you are studying. There is zero context, zero emotion, zero rhythm. Your mouth forms the words, but you are basically a robot reading code.
And as we discussed, that builds a very fragile, brittle motor plan, one that completely shatters the moment the environmental context changes.
Exactly. Now, scenario B, the English Spark method based on this protocol. You're listening to Zayden and Alara. Alara is casually telling a story about a misunderstanding she had at a grocery store.
Okay, a relatable daily life scenario.
Yeah. She was trying to ask the clerk what he was thinking about, but she slipped up and accidentally asked him what he was thinking about. Like a sinking ship.
Oh, that's a classic mix-up.
It is. It's slightly embarrassing. It's funny. They both laugh about it. The listener is completely relaxed. Their parasympathetic nervous system is engaged.
They're just enjoying the story.
Right. Then, seamlessly, without breaking character, Zayden says, oh, wow, think versus sink. That is a tough one. Hey, listen carefully. Think. See how my tongue just pushes against my top teeth. Think. Repeat after me. What are you thinking about?
Look at what just happened physiologically in that moment. The learner's affective filter is incredibly low because they are fully engaged in the narrative and the humor.
They don't even realize they're being taught.
Exactly. Then they listen carefully, cue, snaps their auditory cortex to attention. The simple explanation gives their conscious brain a quick, non-intimidating mechanical target.
And then the immediate shadowing forces the motor cortex to execute the movement while the body is still in that relaxed conversational state.
The muscle memory forged in that specific environment is incredibly elastic. It is robust. It maps directly onto the messy, unpredictable reality of actual human interaction.
It's like you're sneaking the vegetables into a delicious fruit smoothie. The learner is getting this rigorous, scientifically grounded physical workout for their jaw. But their conscious experience is just hanging out with two friends who happen to be helping them with a tricky sound.
It creates this beautiful illusion of effortless conversation while secretly running a highly disciplined athletic training camp for the vocal tract.
Which fundamentally changes how you, the listener, should approach your own language practice tomorrow morning.
It really does require a complete mindset shift.
Yeah. If you take the core lessons from this English Spark methodology, your very first step is a total paradigm shift. You have to stop viewing pronunciation as an intellectual memory test and start treating it as a physical discipline.
You're literally retraining muscles that have been locked in place for decades.
And because it is purely physical, you must respect the biology. You have to start simple.
Right, you don't bench press 300 pounds on day one.
Exactly. You master the smooth, basic sentences before you ever attempt the complex consonant clusters. You have to protect your cognitive bandwidth.
And furthermore, you cannot bypass your ears. You have to actively break your own perceptual narrowing.
Use that active listening to force your brain to build an accurate acoustic map before you ever demand your tongue to actually move.
And when you do practice, please abandon the robotic textbook drills.
Yes. Shadow real, messy, rhythmic conversation. Build your muscle memory in the exact psychological state you actually intend to use it in.
Because ultimately, your biological hardware is not the problem. Your vocal cords, your tongue, your palate, they are physically capable of producing literally any phonetic sound in the human repertoire.
It's so true. You just have to supply the correct mechanical training to turn those alien contortions into automated reflexes.
It just takes time and the right kind of reps.
It is honestly incredibly empowering to realize that fluency isn't some magical genetic gift.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of reps. High quality, actively mapped, properly myelinated reps.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Which leaves me with a final, slightly wild thought for you to chew on as you go about your day. We've established today that learning the pronunciation of a new language is fundamentally about altering your physical muscle memory, right?
Yeah, literally changing the resting posture of your facial muscles.
Exactly. How you hold your jaw, the resting tension in your lips. So if you fully adopt the physical embouchure of a completely new language, to what extent does changing your physical face actually change your psychology?
Oh, that's a deep question.
Right. Does holding your jaw differently subtly alter your personality or even how you physically carry yourself in your daily life? Something to think about the next time your jaw aches from speaking.